We have decided, well, first of all, I'm always very pleased to introduce our friends and experts. Marina Skorikova will moderate and chair these sessions today. She was a participant and indeed an attending these seminars. But she, having come from the Yaroslavl TV television and being a notorious person, has come to work for the school. Georgy Bovt is, I think, one of the most serious Russian journalists today, and I'm a constant reader of his works that are published. He has a unique propensity to shed light on the different sides of the life in this country. And the people at the universities, the professorial establishment in this country is still quite valid. And I think that education is related to understanding, but it is probably indirectly related, because even if one is educated, understanding requires an effort. This effort is at the same time an effort of intellect and an effort of conscience. This is why I'm always drawn to read Georgy's writings. Thank you, Georgy. Thank you for agreeing to host and to have this first session. Thank you, Lena. I think that the compliments are redundant, but I still thank you. The topic that has been proposed for this session is the state and media in the modern Russia, which is at the same time boundless and but at the same time quite narrow, because there hardly anything that I could say of what you would not know about the state and the media in modern Russia. So it might very well be that the second part of our session might be of greater interest to you, because we will have the questions and answers part. However, if we tackle this in general terms, let me start with the boring part. I don't see anything special going on. Whatever we are seeing is quite in line with the Russian historical tradition, but it also is in the context of the global changes which are occurring in the relations between the state and the mass media in the modern world. I think that today, in this sense, Russia is not a standalone country. It is a part of the global processes which are seen differently in different countries. In Russia, in China, in the United States, we have not come from the moon. I mean, we the Russians, and we view and are part of this global events. There are about 90,000 mass media in Russia which have been registered in this country, but this number varies every year. What is of interest is that only 10% of these are the state-owned mass media. And mass media, when one was to ask what was it that was bringing together the Russian Empire on the eve of 1917, or what was it that tied together the Soviet Union on the eve of 1991? It was the all-national mass media. So in this sense, about 15 state-owned channels and some satellite channels bring this general context together and keep up this generalized information space. This has long been said and rightfully asserted that the internet is a competitor of the printed mass media. It is at the same time paradox and the truth. But the truth be said is that in the websites of the mass media, there are quite a few visitors, but only every fourth internet user is usually visiting the mass media. So this is generally a low percentage of these people who read or indeed download any news. So we're dealing with several categories of the information space. So that information space which is being created by, say, Channel 1 is about 4% overlapping with the information space which is being generated by the internet. And while a lot has been said about the society of the internet and the society of the TV in Russia, it is at the same time right and wrong. Because, first of all, these two information spaces overlap, and secondly, these 4% do correlate with the society which is still offline. It is equally interesting to read the statistics whereby the mail.ru and yandex.ru or Vkontakte or even Google, the foreign-held Google, are generally ahead of one, two or two federal channels in the audience. I am not going to encumber you with the numbers, which are in millions, but we are not only talking about the audience before of those who are under 34 years of age, but we're also talking about the much larger community who are under 64, and Yandex.ru is still ahead of Channel 1, which is proudly taking the second place. And it is also specifically interesting that the state could not have not taken a notice of this. So what is it that Russia is not alone in? I believe that in one of the books that has recently been published by Eric Schmidt, one of the co-founders of Google. While taking notice of these global trends, consider this period of the so-called free development of the Internet coming to a close, and a tendency of nationalization of the Internet in part through the creation of the development of the national segments of the Internet is not only inherent in such countries as Iran and China, which is quite well understood for political reasons, or Russia for that matter, which is and has been over the past month making a move in terms of the long-term tendencies, but it is also becoming more or less common thing for other countries. So the tendency for the filtration of the Internet content are increasingly seen in Europe and in America, although this has been and is being done in a somewhat different way, without meddling with the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So while conferences and seminars are being created, and we are seeing that the number of such forums increase to try and see how we can preclude the jihad mongers from Europe to go and stand in line with the Islamic State of Levant, which is of course very difficult to do on the level of the European Union or in the ambit of the US legislation.
But nevertheless, this can be done because of the understanding that is evolving. We sometimes see it happening due to technological interventions, that the sites become either unavailable or hard to access.
Делается путем различных технических, так сказать, ну, может быть, даже манипуляций и так далее.
This is done also due to some technical manipulations. Or, for example, nowadays in the United States, they are widely debating a technology that evolved in Wall Street. It has long been known that it's not brokers who are trading in Wall Street, it's automatic machines are doing something. It's not what we see in Hollywood movies. It's but the machines who have certain software operate on it and trade on the exchange, and it takes split seconds for this program and software to take a decision. Where is the competitive edge here? The competitive edge was discovered first, probably, Goldman Sachs. He decided that if he should be physically positioned 5 to 10 kilometers closer to the server, he would stand to win. This turned out to be the case. So fiber optic lines let this signal spread several nanoseconds faster to Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs, who paid to stay closer to the server, wins the competition from his partners. Probably the same is being discussed about providers, internet providers. The question is posed this way: should we charge a fee? Should they charge fee for internet resources to speed up the traffic? So far, the question has not yet been addressed at the legislative level, but we understand where it's all going for. This can be regulated by a much more subtle method than something that can fit into the head of, say, imagined Deputy Dingin from Russian Liberal Democratic Political Party, LDPR, who is not very... It's just an abstract situation, abstract deputy who tries to regulate internet without fully being aware of what is going on, with using quite obsolete methods. A good example could be a law that was adopted last summer. When you read it literally, everybody got very upset. It turns out when you get into a taxi, you need to produce your passport. What are they going to do about it? Passport data of all people, all the visitors, clients. But it doesn't work this way. The law, yes, it has been adopted, but it is not operational. But its use literally means quite absurd situation. And I don't even know how they have evolved with some bylaws under this law, but it doesn't work de facto. Because nobody really recording your passport data. Although identification of the users, this is a matter that has been addressed across the world. It was addressed in many different ways. For example, in Europe, very often, yes, they want some SMS confirmation from you, log in, hotspot or some other for fee admission, but since mobile devices, they are verified, so there are other European countries, where say Iceland, where at any gas station you can get on Wi-Fi. It doesn't mean you are not identified. No, ways to identify you are much more subtle and work in a much more subtle way. And on the one side, yes, it's great that there are many fools in the house, but it's not that good at all. What is good that they do not know, they do not understand the reality of today's space. I bet there are quite a lot of intelligent people there too. However, the fashion for foolish initiatives has been widespread recently. They don't know how today's information space works, so they cannot even, as they have this sort of urge to forbid everything, they do not know how to do it properly. If they had known how to do it, so surely they would employ much more efficient methods that would achieve the objectives that they set. So Wi-Fi with a passport details access, this is a very good example. Anyways, probably in the near future some filtration of internet content is to come to Russia. And this will not be something unique, purely. This know-how exists in many countries. And if you look, say, at the freest formerly country, such as the United States, if you are getting too carried away with downloading pirate content or pedophilia sites, you will get a visit by the police, and they will surely find you very easy using IP address or having bypassed VPNs and others. They will surely arrest you. And therefore this is also a manifestation of the order, identifying the pirates, identifying the pedophiles or militants of the Islamic State. In this case,
по сущности, ничем не отличаются от России.
Americans' law enforcement officers are in no way different from Russian law enforcement officers who say that you should persecute extremism. A different matter is that in legal exercises, Jesuitic-like, Anglo-Saxons are much more subtle because they have a long, many centuries going back practice, whereas with us, we still have a gap like when we had a time when mostly revolutionary law prevailed over formal legislation, formal law.
По какому принципу будет делаться эта фильтрация, не очень понятно. Скорее всего, она будет...
How will they proceed about this filtration? Probably it should be context-based, which, as I see it, predetermines the vast number of loopholes about it. Loopholes that, if you look at it at household level, you could really close up in terms of terrorism, ways to create a nuclear bomb or pedophilia. This certainly is a shortcoming of interaction of the state and leaders of internet community, because if that happened in discussion, an interesting discussion, engaged discussion, they could find a compromise, even consensual solution for many questions that pose real interest in terms of public security, in terms of morality and so on, which could be done without going for some formal law that needs to be adopted. An example, can you formally write down the rules to use, I don't know what?
Да, в конечном виде. Нет, нельзя, потому что это определяется...
Fork and knife, for example. No, you can't do it, because this is what tradition describes it. And whatever you write in the law, even if it says 1,000 pages long, you can always invent a law to bypass this formal list. The way the law regulates how to manipulate with a fork and knife. This is what is called just formal law, or says just rules of etiquette. If the law doesn't say, for example, that you can poke the fork into your nose, well, the law formally you don't violate it because the law doesn't say you shouldn't. But common sense says you should not do it. In terms of print media, the question has long ago been addressed, and in many ways it was not addressed using formal legislation. For that matter, I mean regulation of content in the interests of the state. Why? Because the law about the print media, nobody has really tried to amend it since the 1990s. It is around and it works as one of the most decent laws that we have around, most advanced laws, but what is not yet available on the internet, informal relations, some administrative intervention, financial leverage, they led to the fact that print and offline media, such as television, they sort of fit in, found themselves built in quite constructively from the perspective of the state into the information policy.
И ведут себя дисциплинированно, и, в общем, особых канонов, так сказать.
They behave in a disciplined manner, and they're not really violating any canons of civic stability. They don't seek to violate it. And there are many ways to make them come back to their senses if they want to violate the rules of the game. In point of fact, these methods of regulation in general are more or less known and are more or less the same across the world. And if any, say, in the very most democratic country in Europe or in America, some media should all of a sudden, if its owner, say, should become absolutely careless and should decide to go out of the general line that has been reached by consensus or compromised, which is approved by the majority of society, in one or other way, it is the market or somebody else that will put him back in line. And in point of fact, what is known with rough term manipulation of public conscience, it certainly has a feedback effect, in a sense that they created such public conscience that seeks to block marginal manifestations that doesn't want to hear. Honestly, I believe that in this country too, we could not really go beyond by adopting some exotic laws, because our public conscience has very much the same properties, and you shouldn't be afraid that our people, and this fear is pertinent for our law enforcement, that our people are more foolish than others in the world and will not be able to sort of discharge and disregard marginal things and extremism, because many many bans are really not needed because they do not seek to address anything, any question, or carry out any function. For example, a notorious law about bloggers. It was discussed very passionately by, say, 3,000 visitors per day, and here you are. You should be registered in the Roskomnadzor. The procedure for registration should be voluntary. You report yourself, or some person who wishes you well will report you, and you will get a letter that say, "Dear friend, follow the law, please." And the law is very simple in this way. But what is the statistic about this long-term use? About 500,000 reported cases, some 700 people wrote to the Roskomnadzor. The letter started with the words, "Please pay attention to this blogger's blog." Another 700 tried, even fewer, some 350, tried to register on their own, by self-reporting. But in point of fact, it's over 130 people who were registered overall. That is, yes, they wanted to do it all, but the statistical result is not very convincing. Should they really should all this hype, what is all this hype about? For what purpose this 130 bloggers went to this labor-consuming registration, but still, it can be monetized, this procedure. Some people are taking care of it, are watching it, some people are writing papers about it, some people are doing something which can be expressed in rubles and percentage of GDP, which in the long run
Зрение поставленных целей неэффективно, потому что все те же 130 человек можно было привлечь за экстрим.
Is not efficient because this 130 could really be made liable for not complying with the law on elections, for insulting somebody, for infringement of privacy, or I don't know, based upon the existing legislation. There was no innovation about it at all. But nevertheless, the law was adopted and some percent of GDP went into minus. I expect the same fate awaits the law adopted about foreign participation in mass media. Current legislation applies to TV channels and radios of networks that broadcast in a territory more than half of the population of Russia, and if the foreigners own 50 or more percent in this media, and the new threshold is 25%, this really poses quite alarmist fears that this may lead to redistribution of property in the Russian media market. I suppose the way the law was adopted was very much like passport data about Wi-Fi. There is lack of coordination, to put it mildly, in draft decisions and decisions between different branches of government and different actors in the political scene. I do not suppose that the bill was born because of thorough endorsement between the Ministry of Health, Communication and people who were drafting it in the State Duma, because the executive government think that the reality will be much richer than the law, and we will we will regulate it by bylaws which lead to quite the opposite effect that the law seeks to achieve. And the second is that quite derogatory attitude of traditional, which is typical of Russian historical and legal tradition for formal law. Who cares what is written down there? Formal law. And thirdly, the same derogatory attitude towards practice, law enforcement practice, by the people who are supposed to enforce it. Nevertheless, the law will formally affect over half of Russian media, to put it roughly. It will affect the channels which are considered to be federal, for example, STS, which in terms of ranks as number 2 among the young audience, that has amongst owners not only foreigners, and who's listed at Nasdaq. Therefore, STS should leave Nasdaq because it cannot guarantee that in Nasdaq somebody with a foreign passport should purchase over 25% of shares. Certainly they cannot guarantee or preclude it. In this case, quite a primitive. What would follow is that probably the decline in capitalization of the channel and general decline in capitalization of the media market, which already took place when the law was adopted on, say, cable television channels cannot advertise unless, say, they cannot advertise. They thought that they would hit TV channel Dort, rain. I suppose many law enforcement lawmakers initiated a law against, because this is all against newspaper Ведомости. No, it did not go. The first to leave the market became television of Komsomolskaya Pravda, because there was lots of advertising like this. So much how one is pre-calculating from the market perspective, and what's the point for the market of this innovation. At that, there are many ways to regulate this market following the same ends, using informal methods by intervention between administrative pressure, which you do not condemn really. Well, that's wrong. But this is the reality that exists. Administrative pressure and different ways of political pressure that they can put on the media. In point of fact, in this case, activities like this, they are in no way different from, say, well, like to shirt front, say, the owner of Komsomolskaya, Sungurkin, saying, look, you should remove this person, the same like they remove the president of Czech Republic, who is pro-Russian. Today's world is much richer in forms of influencing and regulation, in using, amongst others, informal ways that, rather than writing silly laws, we should not exhaust the situation and not effective in regulating the processes and achieving the results that they seek. Well, so much about the law on advertising. They thought it would serve the interests of I don't know who's, by Nikolai Mikhail Lesin and advertising agencies that they want to ascribe to him. But in point of fact, life has shown, indeed, that real impact of this law is much more unpredictable than what the lawmakers thought it would be. And in my view, this may lead to such influences as decline in general capitalization of the Russian media market, at that in most unexpected regions and segments of the most innocuous and innocent in terms of political dangers they may pose for the ruling class and so on and so forth. This will lead to growing unemployment in this sector of economy, may lead to declining quality, and will hit as a boomerang the state as in the face of those primitive law enforcement agents, when they realize that they don't have these effective methods to influence public opinion, because only fools would go there if they low-paid, a low self-esteem person who turned out at this declining method because of his failures. But this will look more or less the same. Then, whereas at highly capitalized market, the situation will be very much different, and in the same goes propaganda in the good sense of the word, as well as building proper ideological line in terms of the ruling government. In principle, you should employ people with high-paid, talented, knowledgeable, who know how to deal with the audience where Yandex leads, unlike Channel 1, and use it more effectively than fools that do it. But, you know, our national tradition is to to commit the same mistakes and get punished for it, sort of. As to 20% threshold, it's my sort of apocalyptic forecast. Yes, we shall see redivision of property. It's over half of printed media. When there is not Viasat, which is a Swedish satellite, they're not there. CNN are not there, which also left, because they didn't have. Bloomberg will still stay, because it has been accredited and this law doesn't apply to it. And, firstly,
Общее падение капитализации рынка.
the same effect I was referring to, decline in total capitalization, decline in its attractiveness for advertising, declining in terms of investment, and secondly, irrational spending of resources for what? For legal sort of adjustments. This law exists in Kazakhstan. Has it led to mass media that existed in the Kazakh market leave the market? No, they didn't. It didn't lead to that. They just wasted some effort, in terms of percentage of GDP.
Чтобы оформить это в виде всяких хитроумных юридических схем. Работа по франшизе, например.
To come up with some, intricate schemes, for example, work using franchise. This is what we call, I suppose, if the Vedomosti wants to remain in this market, they will find a way to continue in the same way as it exists today, but this will be legally made in such a way that you won't find it possible to, and they will, law enforcement agencies saying that their fire safety, for example, doesn't work, as well as practicing lawyers should can understand that they remain the same newspaper that belongs to the Financial Times. Well, the example of the decline in influence on the capitalization. Yes, we've got this example. Say Yandex, we say this year lost. It had capitalization of, let me see, in early 2014 it was about $15 billion as of early February. After only several announcements and declarations made by the high leadership, it declined by $5-6 billion, and nowadays, because of the general rising skepticism towards Russian internet market in terms of its market capitalization, I suppose it has no longer listed as investment opportunity in a number of investment funds as something that doesn't have any promise, which is quite understandable for many Russian retailers, say like Magnit and others, who, because of the crisis, they are also in the same way they do not promise anything, whereas it used to be, it's 15 billion. Speaking about the general capitalization of the Russian market as of early this year, it was $143 billion. This is 1.3 billion of IT professionals who work there. This is 8.5% of generation using of the Russian domestic something. So this is a substantial part of the market. This is 8.5% of all Russian trading, both domestic and market. This is quite a substantial segment, which in point of fact, in terms of market economy, first of all, should not be impacted in such a manner. You could do it and regulate it much more efficiently using informal methods, very much like it's done, say, in America, where both Google and Yahoo they're very much being consulting the law enforcement, and Yandex, although it's the Russian company, they could really work in the very same manner, very much like they did with mail.ru, by just making them change their top management. Well, and apart from that, we are facing yet another stage which also has global character. This is something that is not about internet media.
And so the distributors of media content and browsers, internet platforms, and the state and no more and even the market players, they don't know what's going to happen. No one has a clue. And so the personal data law is going to become effective on the 1st of September 1916. If it is to be interpreted literally, it means that the internet country, protection of the internet site from the rest of the world, because your personal data may become available. It's everywhere, virtually. And so the law appeared as a result of the lack of understanding of how the modern world acts and how the world information environment works. What is personal data? What is cloud technology? They have no clue. So what is metadata? They have no idea. And so everything it's taken. It's fait accompli. And so this virgin conservation of data has long since been lost. And so the way of metadata monitoring and control, so it's very well developed. They are super natural, not supranational, so they are above, and that is why. So this has gone out of control. So certainly the CIA and Langley certainly have a shorter stretch of cable to our data, like any other big country, big special agency. But otherwise, it's the same, because on the basis of our own domestic companies like Yandex, that is ahead of Google even now, and they have the advantage that they have a direct. So then Yandex cable is shorter than Google's stretch of cable that reaches every household. It's just shorter. I think that at the political level, so the decision has not yet been taken, and much will depend how the things will work out with the West until September 2016, because there is, from the viewpoint of the rates of development and how events changed so fast, that it's so until September 2016 there is so much time, and so probably this law will have been changed many times over before this date arrives. And no iPhone, no iPad, no Apple products. So maybe so you cannot call by cell phone, because if you call on your cell phone, so you can get access to your personal data. If you use your iPad, iPhone, so you can always get your tablet, so you can always get access to your. So even an old phone, which is not, it's not profitable even for the state. The state doesn't gain anything from this data law, data protection law. So if I were a KGB, I would not stop internet, Facebook, and Twitter, because it's a very convenient means of controlling, of monitoring those guys who arise suspicion, because they actually they tell on themselves, those who are in Twitter. So all you have to do is just to watch they say, and so this is a bonanza for KGB. And what they do is just the stupidity of such so that's died in the wood, stupid guys who are trying just to fight, and some special services that they will say that's a good method to monitor, to watch, to keep to surveillance over people. But certainly if the stupidity reigns, then Twitter, Facebook will close down, so they will say that all the servers need to be brought to Russia, and all the international resource It needs to go so that if anyone who talks to anyone who has a Russian passport, an American passport, they should have the server here, and so on, all the data concerning credit cards, debit cards, plastic communications with the hotel abroad. So all needs to be stored in a server located in Russia. So if the stupidity wins the day, and certainly there are different methods, and I think that we are at the bifurcation. So there's this fork. So which methods will prevail? So stupid, which do not understand how the modern processes evolve, or smart, developed, evolved, and so based on good competencies that will allow both the state and special services of the state and the advocates of the state, in good meaning of the soldiers, to regulate the public process, and to pursue the policy of that the state is vested in, is interested in. So they will be able just to talk to the mass conscience, and so more evolved, more advanced methods of talking to the people. So this is the bifurcation, and so within the next couple of years, so we'll see which way we'll take. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to draw attention to this basic idea that our experts started with, and actually which became the underpinning main point, the red line of our seminar. And this, I hope that everything what's happening in Russia, in any environment, the media, the government, public processes, anything, all this is part of the global trends, part and parcel. And this attempt to isolate a certain third way, specific way, unknown way. So these feelings that are running high just to create just something unique that could be characteristic only of Russia, that doesn't exist. It won't ever happen. So we go back in history and look at the way the cross-section of the world events. So we can see that it happened someplace already, or it's happening right now, or will be happening. And the task of our seminar to show this cross-section, to show a detached view at our world and at our country and at the world. And so detachment is very important, kind of helicoptering away. And so then we see that we are inscribed, factored into the global process, but methods, rhetoric is different, and methods are different. And this is what we need to get focused on, and what instruments we are using. And maybe the problem and the challenge is in the set of instruments we're using, because what we have before we address an issue will determine its outcome. So Georgievich about here, so profitable, unprofitable for the state to this bifurcation vis-a-vis. And so please, you need to think about it from your to get your original view. So whether the state stands to gain or not. So if we talk about the media or what Lena was talking about, this law on foreign agents, Lena spoke about that. This from this legitimate, so the discussion component is getting driven away from the legitimate environment. It's kind of dissolved, and it is vaporized, and then the people so it's pushed out. So it's kind of pushed into the corner. So this open discussion efforts. And I have apprehensions because now there is no demand in the society for professionals in this area, and in political and public life, and I think that even in journalism it exists as well, that people cannot speak their minds, and so maybe that could be the issue, the core, the root of the issue. So professionalism. Does the public need professionalism or not? I think that this question is not so much about vis-a-vis journalism, and so the quality of state institutions and public institutions, that's another component. So it can be built along different lines. So they could be built on the basis of the democracy that is described as the democracy of the Western type, so born in the 19th century, end of the 18th, and the Anglo-Saxon countries actually solidified it, and it's there now. Or it could be based on the meritocracy level, so Asian meritocracy, so with professional bureaucracy, with certain cultural, historic traditions that preclude the fools to get to the top bureaucratic positions. And actually, in professional sphere, as a professional society, so they built along the same lines. There's a competition, unfortunately. So there is no dictate of the market. So what they say is, so then they. So these people have a certain some have competitive edge, so because the people voted for you, and that is why, so the number of views and likes is so much, and so on, so 82% public support, and so that's why certainly, so they win the day. So just go, if you want to go to a niche channel, so go, and you'll get only 30% of the salary you would otherwise get if you are a journalist that protects and speaks for the interests of the state. This is there. So meritocracy. I think that we are in a limbo between one and the other, between meritocracy and the Anglo-Saxon understanding of what Western democracy is. And so then in the Soviet period, so you can see that at the state government level and at the mass media level, so we still have this legacy of the Soviet state, because the state has more capabilities and levers and methods and formal, informal methods in order to promote and to progress whatever the state is interested in, and so they're more omnipotent, and then through different media channels they can do that, and certainly, but the state loses the game to very often. Loses the game very often because they do not use these methods, and so they go down to the low-level propaganda, which is not efficient, instead of using more subtle methods of leverage and of putting pressure on the public. And because if I continue this Riefenstahl-Kiselov line, so they're very talented in their own way, or maybe a fool. So who will bring down so the right from the ideological point of view program to the low rating level, and no one will watch it, and whatever he will say will turn against the state and against him personally. So if he is a fool, so let's open up the discussion. Evgeny, press secretary. Evgeny, two questions. One has to do with the Russian question, and the second is global context question. So, having listened to you, I remember a phrase that one of my favorite friends, editors, said, and so media business work reminds me of playing chess, when your partner has a chance to unpredictably and uncontrollably change the rules of the game. And so this phrase was said 15 years ago. So nothing new under the sun. So nothing new has been invented 15 years ago. See this chess play. So what happened to the first channel? So the equity holding changed hands, and the NTV. So then how Dost and the Echo Moskvy and others. So you will have heard of the last scandal and Lenta. So that's remembering so these inputs. So when the rules of the game may be unexpectedly changed, so we can compare this to American crisis. So give us this new phrase: too big to fail, right? Too big to fail. And we get the impression that for the media, there's too big to leave, because for the media rule. And in Russia, that's what we have right now. And so anyone who wants to become independent, so they will reach a certain level when they become noticeable by the public and the state, and then the state closes them down. That's it. So they grow, and then they kill them. And what is the optimal happy medium form of the media that will have to operate within the next several years? Yeah, because we understand that the agenda will not change for the next 5-10 years. And so maybe kind of lenta, mobile, very quick, vibrant team that went to Estonia, and a small team of 5 to 10 trying just to build independent media. Or it should be like Vedomosti, a big one which has economy of scale, big editors, chief editors, publishing houses, which has a big resource and guarantees the reliability of the source, and its status suggests the value of the information it generates. Or we can just we can just go down to the level of one blogger, so like Navalny or Koch, who sometimes the number of subscribers has more readership than any printed media. And so what's the optimum size of the media and the second, the global experience concerning that, because I think that America has selected paid subscription system. And New York Times did it some years ago, but the Washington Post, they did it they started to give 10 articles for free, and then the subscription. So Wall Street Journal never provided any free materials, but they always asked us to pay for the access to the materials, and but when they go to New York Times to get access to it, they get 40 free articles. Wall Street Journal, they even went further, so they never provided any paid any free articles. And so in Russia, for example, Dost, this mechanism is very slow. So Sloan, they did it very, very badly. And so then the interview who was responsible for the paid content, so who wants to find it, so understands how difficult to address this issue of free or paid or Vedomosti that lost to Kommersant. So when they started to introduce a paid in subscription, and so Vedomosti lost, and Kommersant actually gained a lot, and the Vedomosti lost lots of audience who could not pay, and that is why they lost a great deal of readership because they were starting to force to pay for the content that they provided to the readership, and. Or it will change, and the paid mechanism, the fee-paying mechanism for the content is gaining ground, or the other way around. Yeah. Unpredictable rules of the game is part of the game, so this is something given, because you know this is the rule of the game. You know that you are part of unpredictable rules of the game, but you know that there is a certain vice governor, for example, if you hold this office, or head of department of the media, so you need just to build relations with that guy, so who deals with this, and depending on how well you delineate your relationship, with the vice governor on public relations, for example, vice governor on the media, so if you, it's actually quite predictable and understandable rules of the game. So much depends on how well you cooperate with those guys. So, because if you have an access to Mr. Gromov, who is the governor of Moscow Oblast, it's one, for example, or not. And so when we talk about the absence of professionals of the regulators, so for example, Deputy Dengin and some other stupid guys, and so we think that they exist only there. No, there are lots of it on this side of the game as well. And for example, Lenta, so they are the part of the state and not the part of the private effort. So I think that Lenta, Lenta is so professional, and they left the market. This is horrible. I don't agree, because I didn't like Lenta very much. I don't see anything unique about Lenta from the viewpoint of what they can offer to the information market, and I don't think that Galina Timchenko is the protagonist of the free journalism. Pandit of free journal from the viewpoint of traffic, and so then 1 month after So Lenta had left, so the readership went down, and now it went up to the same level, so even higher, in spite of the fact that they left, because the aggregator of the news, who works in copy-paste mode, so cannot fail. And this is it. So it's just a problem of placement, promotion, and information technologies, and not the uniqueness of a certain quality of a unique creative team. Because I do not believe in Medusa, because there are some professional drawbacks how to create content. So once they left, once they were denied, so in the Mammoth Holding things that they had, so then immediately we realized that they couldn't do it because they were not professional enough, that they could not create unique product, unique technologies. What they offer, I can read at Navalny's site, I can read at other running commentaries of the opposition oriented people. So there is no unique commercial offer, no proposal, no proposition. And so with due respect to these people, that is why I'm sorry that I'm being I speak forcefully, but we do not want to create something that we need to venerate. So they say, so they should not expose them. So Roskomnadzor warned them. So you know the regulation, you know the situation in the country. Why did you expose yourself? Why did you stick your neck out? So you know the level of paranoia in certain circles. Why do you publish it? And so what will be the implications? Didn't you know that? So you need to put your money where your mouth is. So you are in a combat situation. You are in the middle of the battlefield. And you know exactly that they can set you up, they can trip you up, and knowing exactly what might happen, what the implications might be, you still do it. So okay, so you can even publish the interview with the ISIS combat man. And then they will certainly close you down. But if you had not exposed yourself, probably they would have let you leave for another 3-4 years. That's an example of lack of professionalism under difficult present conditions. Don't expose yourself. The same as Plush. So, stupidity, egregious stupidity. It's not because Ivanov is untouchable and Yakov could be touched. It's not the point. Because you write a post, so when you have, so to say, Mikhail Yurievich Yesin, and who is not an ideological partner and friend for you, so he's your opponent, and under the circumstances, so the question about corporate discipline should be put on the top of the agenda. And moreover, so there was a great deal of experience. So when Dost polled the people, so about the surrender of Leningrad, and so actually they made this mistake, and you are going just to make the same mistake. Just listen. So I would have fired Plushev the same day. So why? Because they made a mistake. Why should we make the same mistake and follow in his in Dost's path concerning the surrender of Leningrad? So I would not say that we claim on a greater purity than those dirty people in the power and authority. So should we just stoop down to their level? You need to go and tender in your resignation. That's how I would have behaved. And in this case, Benediktov is good because he managed to get away with it. But he was risking a lot, but he got away with it because he risked a lot. Because if in Brisbane, before Putin came to Brisbane, so not Peskov, but Gromov, if he was. Then the nature and the fate of resource would have been different. So should we risk that to such extent? No. So because this risk is unjustified, there's no point. Stupid risk. And so because sometimes, for example, I'm cool, I'm groovy, I can do that, and so I will play better. But you could frame the entire resource so that actually serves good purposes. That's an alternative point of view, and you could have framed it, and they framed it, they set it up. and so which plays a very important role. So this very important media resource, and you cannot risk its existence because it's playing very important role. Because you know that tomorrow people will not come out, millions of people will not come take to the streets to protect you, because we live in a society that nobody will help you. So certainly if you can provoke some millions of people taking to the streets, but you live in a different society, and you should not lose the levers of that how to impact society that you still have left. And then in this connection, it is true that you can certainly say that he conforms. You can blame them of conformism. Okay, we can blame them of conformism, but to take to the streets, even just to protest the paid parking, not against Sobyanin, but only just against one of the departments of Mr. Sobyanin. So it requires certain political courage, even just to go and protest the wrong parking rules. So even if you're just if you for example were defrauded when you paid for an apartment and the apartment was not given to you, so still if you go and talk about it publicly, so it's dangerous. So that's why we need to. I think that so probably in 5 years' time they will squash you, but maybe they will not squash you. But keep a low profile, and then for the next 5 years you can speak your minds, and everything will be fine. So then about. So the readiness to pay for the information is different. The level of. So we are at the beginning of a long way. And we don't know when we eventually just follow this road, where the end of this road will be. People not want to pay for the content. That's it, period. And this information should be monetized somehow. So Wall Street, then I will go buy shares, right? Because I know inside, background, because I'm reading Wall Street, and so I think I know, and because the number of some private players in the stock market, through the pension funds, including so from other institutions, so there's tens of millions of people. So that's why you get an insight and you go buy, and you contribute, you monetize. And that is why so this information monetized one way or the other. I know what I'm paying for, because I can later so pay back. I can even get a profit. So, but if I read Slon or an article written by Mr. Pupkin, why should I pay for this content? So what is it that he's given me new that I can monetize in this life and later buy and make money on it? So that's why I'm not going to pay for Slon, because Slon does not provide any information for me, and it's absolute for Vedomosti. I'm a subscriber to Vedomosti. I'm paying, but I regard it as part of my professional activity, and that's the reason why just I subscribe to Time and Foreign Affairs, because I need it by profession, in line of my professional duty. And anyone who needs Vedomosti in line of their duty, they subscribe. So there are few people like that, because the markets are very, very rude simile. So because the Russian market of shares is less than the capitalization of Apple. So the entire equity market, securities market. And that's why the attempt of Dost to achieve that was doomed to failure from the very start. Dost is a niche channel, and so can organize subscription, like for that's for a camera placed on the black somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. So they would like this to watch, so to watch what the camera shows, what's happening on the Mediterranean Sea. And but the people who like Dost, they will subscribe. But for me, it's not a breakthrough in the IT approach, and for me, it's not something that I need to pay for, because whatever Dost says, I will see in the Facebook, right? And then as a caption. I don't even go. Yes, I see a caption, understand what this is all about, because Dost is predictable. And because it belongs to a certain ideological segment. You see, just one little caption, 3 lines, and I understand the drift. I know what that is. And so the same kind of information they provide with their own interpretation, I can get this information from other sources. And this is why this is a commercial mistake. With the help of political resource, Dost will certainly be present in cable channels, so he's got a political resource, and this here positive political resource, and that is why. So it's not like NTV TV channel is crushed in a different way. So they apply pressure on NTV in a different way, and that is why. So Dost will certainly come back in cable channels, and they will let it leave, and everything will be here, and the subscription. So it was a mistake for Dost. Although technically maybe it was not a mistake, so I think that talk about the market, but technically maybe it's not a mistake that actually so they fought, and so that was their strength, and certainly. If they died, so then there would be no need for any resource. But then they came to time. So when the good Medvedev said, "Okay, you can leave," or Putin said, "Okay, let them leave," so they came to Putin and said, "So Putin, so Dost is not such a bad company. It's a small resource, but you can let it leave," and say, "Okay, so let it leave." And so he would just wave it away. So it's not the time to cut it down, and so let it be. And that's the way. And concerning Russia and its functional context. Then Russia has already come out of this context. They have their own information context, and you can see it by the way the news are presented.
An intervention from Liana, and then the Dost TV channel producer will have a say. Well, first of all, let me encourage you to read Mr. Bovt's pieces, which are republished on our website almost weekly. And this is a pick, editor's pick. I'm not an editor of our website. And the second thing I would like to recommend you is to watch his and to read his opinion columns on Gazeta.ru, which is a very professional publication. It's an internet publication, and Mr. Bovt has his pieces published on this web resource almost once a week. So I certainly encourage you to read Gazeta.ru. I'm also watching the Dost TV channel, but I have to say that I agree with Georgy's comments, is that you have to find some verve to become the irreplaceable element for the audience that may continue to watch you. There are journalists here, but this is something that I would like to say for the benefit of all of our participants. You are supposed to write about this seminar. It is being broadcasted, and there's something I would like to say. Your impressions can be registered in the way you want. If you're picking a quotation, then this quotation or a citation needs to be agreed with the speaker. This is this is what I'm saying based on our experience, and we would not want to read any quotations which have not been agreed with the speaker, which might then lead to the breakup of our partnership. Well, I'm Ksenia Batanova from the Khabarovsk region. Well, thank you for your presentation. I would not want to say if I agree or disagree. This is, after all, what our work is about. We listen to everybody. What I would like to say is that, first of all, I'm not quite sure that I understood your statement about our political connections. That's not something that, for the past 8 months, we have only lived off the subscription money. And I think that your statement, the very fact that we're still alive, is repudiated, and the fact that subscription allows us to sustain, to subside for the past 8 months. But I have a question. This is not about the Dožd TV channel. I was somewhat surprised or even frightened. We started by speaking about the state based on the rule of law, and then you said, I will quote this, that this market, the television market, or can be regulated by the administrative pressure, by the political pressure. I'm not judging such things, and the world is much wider than just the laws. So this is, to me, certainly sounds very alarming when you speak, when you say that the life in the society may be governed by something outside of the law. Because this, to me, is an alarming signal. Well, I have spoken in a cynical way, it is true, because, yes, we may we can try and live in an illusion that we live in a state governed by the law. But unfortunately, in reality, it is not true. The reality is much more savage. So while we may pretend that we live in a state governed by the rule of law, I would have certainly preferred it, and it is much easier for me to talk to people in the American state bodies than, say, in Russia, because I know how to behave. If you say A, you will be told B. If you come there, they're quite predictable. They're predictable, and they work on the basis of routines. In this country, many things are unpredictable. Sometimes you have to smile, sometimes you bring some chocolate, and then if you have a good accord with the head of the regional administration, that's one thing. Otherwise, so let's take the example of Catherineburg and Kuivashen and the internet channel. Would there have been any affair if they had not, say, had an affair? And I think that in some cases we're seeing some more civilized approaches compared to, say, the 1950s or the 1970s. Today, we have a lot more freedoms throughout all periods that Russia has known. But we don't like it, because it is not sufficient compared to other countries, compared to our expectations, which I think are quite exaggerated compared to the status and the condition of this society. This society has a rift between the educated minority and the majority, which is generally content with the way the country develops today. With respect to the insiders and inside information, if the Dožd TV channel were to be suppressed, if the Dorscht channel were to be suppressed in the same way as, say, NTV was dismantled, then the Dorscht would have by now ceased to exist. In my personal opinion, which of course I cannot corroborate with any document evidence. However, I think that the Dorscht TV channel has sympathizers within the decision-making circles. And these sympathizers help. So the subscriptions, say, could have been totally cancelled off, and they could have taken the Dorscht TV channel out of the October complex. And in terms of the outlook or the horizons, there is a number of subscribers, but these cannot. These funds are, of course, are not sufficient to develop. I think that for today there is only one unique commercial purpose, an offer, which is a position. In terms of commercialization or expansion, which would have allowed the TV channel to evolve as an information resource, such a position in today's Russian society not sufficient. Because of that, if one helps such a channel to go back into the cable networks, that would be good. But I will never allow for a thought that this will happen in itself without any administrative resource. Well, Mr. Bovt has shown some skeptical outlook, but of course we continue to have our hopes. Mr. Lobunov from Bryansk. I know two different ways to shape public opinion. If a stool is broken, one can repair it, and the objective reality will persuade me that this stool has been repaired. Then, if I'm being told that this stool is not broken, and that if somebody else is being persuaded that one can sit on this stool, the ex-governor of the Bryansk region was a young journalist in the so-called totalitarian times, and he was writing critical articles. And the heads of the Central Committee of the Bryansk region said that Mr. Lotkin should continue to be a journalist. When we say that the policies towards the mass media is for the benefit of the state, I think that a broken stool is not for the benefit for either the stool itself, for those who try to sit on it, or those who try to persuade us that the stool is not broken. Some people might try to benefit, but the state does not benefit by this on the whole. Well, I did not mean that it is for the benefit of the state. I was just trying to shed and to express my opinion as to what is happening. I did not say that I am for more rigid policies. There is a ruling class in this country. There is a regime, a government, which is pursuing certain tasks. There is a president that the majority of the people in this country have voted for, and who enjoys 84% popularity. And I think that in the interests of this president, of this ruling class, of this regime, could be done this way or that way. I'm not saying that I'm for or against it. I'm just trying to say that these are the alternatives. Let me say yet again, it is the eternal Russian question. If people is given the freedom, what would people do? The people would go and burn down the estate of the master of the land. This perception did not come to the fore when, say, Mr. Putin came to the office and Mr. Surkov became the ideology manager in this country in the past 15 years. No, this is a notion that has existed in Russia for the past several hundreds of years. And the political courage to try something, to try this freedom, would be too risky for the government. I'm just trying to stand in their shoes. And this is an instinct of the self-preservation of the state in their view, in their paradigm. By participating in a, say, condominium meeting, I can understand them, because the ability to agree on a horizontal line is very different from the countries which had the bourgeois revolutions in the 17th and 19th and 18th centuries. Because there was a 100 or more experience of, say, elections in the common life. Let us remember that the Enlightenment was based on several hundreds of years, or at least 100 years, of the life of the community in, say, such as the Reformation or electing the pastors. In this country, the history has been different, and the church has been a part of the state, according to Peter I, who was, as one may say, the general secretary of the party at that time. So if you were in the Kremlin, or if I were in the Kremlin, I would have thought, oh, what a savage people! You shouldn't cede any power to them. Many Democrats who came to power came to this conclusion. The terrible nature of this thing and the unavoidability of such a view is alarming to me personally. Mr. Voroshilov, could we speak a little more specific about the reality? If we postulate that the government today and Mr. Putin would have to play out the Novorossiya to keep Crimea inside the Russian Federation, how soon would the state channels and Mr. Kiselyov change their policies? Well, I have my assumption. The lower the price on oil, the more democracy. And I will put a comma here, with the reservation of some points of no return and the mentality of the ruling class. But generally speaking, if oil falls down to $20 dollars a barrel, the journalism and the state propaganda will drop down. I think that if oil were to be $150, we could have been in Kiev by now. This is, of course, a very subjective comment, but if the volume of trade between Russia and America more than, say, American-Chinese relations, then Mr. Kerry would speak about the Kiev fascists in even more categorical and terrible terms than say Mr. Lavrov. The head of the Internet Regulatory Authority, who is operating these 50,000, he's managing these 50,000 people, went to visit Mr. Mark Zuckerberg. And Mr. Zuckerberg invited him to sit in his chair and gracefully received the book with an autograph of Xi Jinping, and that how much flattered he was to entertain this person in his office. Now, let us remember that Facebook is banned in China. But he did not, smash his muzzle. He invited him for a dinner. So let me continue with this cynicism, but it's true. Alyona Alyoshina from Khabarovsk. But then, do you not think that a journalist may indeed become nothing but a pipe for broadcasting the views and the goals of the government? Well, it's a matter of personal choice. I have never worked for the government, never, not a day. It is more difficult for me. I could never work for a government. But some may find it easier. Well, this is the kind of conclusion I have come to. Well, let me just tell you that I'm not saying that something is good or something is bad. I'm just trying to project my view of the reality. I do not think that Mr. Zuckerberg is a champion of democracy. I think that he is a businessman. And the Euro-bureaucrat, in this sense, is not an angel and not a champion of any altruistic or values. Indeed, altruists are no more than 10% among the human species or the animal species. And these 10% do not sit in Brussels or in Kremlin or in Washington or in the offices of Facebook. The altruists who champion the human rights, and so they're playing by the rules. The United States have a security treaty with Taiwan that if China intervenes or into Taiwan, I think that if that happens tomorrow, the United States will not go to a full-fledged war against China. Now, is it good or bad? I'm just expressing my opinion. There are people who have going to work for government. They act out and play out the roles of bureaucrats, but I personally have never willed to act as, say, Kishilov and then come home and say the same things in my kitchen. But to pour out the trash that they do, one has to believe it. One has to trust in it. So this is a matter of personal choice, just as I said. So that's why I've never worked for a government, and I hope I will never work for a government. But of course, it's difficult to say, what one could do under the distress. So I can never guarantee that I will not collaborate in the concentration camp. I would not subscribe to this because it's always easy to subscribe to something, and then it's not difficult it's not easy enough to observe this. So it's a matter of, as I said, a personal choice. If you wish, if you can avoid this, then my choice has been to avoid it. Just as much as people went after Mr. Limonov to go to the Mayakovsky Square. I was not ready for it. This is not my style. And I was not ready to go and stand against the OMON. Is this a guilt or a personal choice? So let us remember the words of Jesus, who said that let him cast the stone who is free of sin. Natalia Bычкова from Samara. My question is from a somewhat different field, and you've touched up the topic of corporate discipline. It's almost a rhetorical question. It is well known that in a prosperous democratic society, the regulation by the state must be reduced to a minimum. And of course, the same pertains to censorship. But the online media have approached and expanded the horizons of a journalism whereby every person can indeed become a newsmaker or indeed a journalist, which in a necessary way leads to a degeneration of language and in a way, the degeneration of the profession. In what view, in what format must or should censorship exist in journalism? Do you believe that there must be some moderation, or else, indeed, it is all about self-moderation? Well, this is also a matter of personal choice. If you are a blogger and then you are responsible before yourself, or else you're an idiot. So one may write that Mr. Putin drinks the blood of Christian babies. So if you do that in a conscious way, then you have to think and mind the consequences. There have been bloggers who... There were people who were indicted for extremism and defamation. Because one can write that Mintemir Shaimiev died, and I was told by Mr. Pupkin, and one can indeed be prosecuted for calumny. Because continuing in the same cynical vein is that anything can be written in different words, in a different way. I have recently had a conversation with a manager of a major internet resource who has fished out a phrase in the writings of his journalist. Putin gone mad. In my time in Kommersant daily, a fine was to be imposed. a big fine was to be paid by the journalist, but a person who has written this and if you disagree with, say, the policies of the ruling class, and there are hundreds of ways to describe the actual incongruities, you can use the great Russian language in a different way, and of course. Is this censorship? When you're in Denmark, you can picture Prophet Muhammad as a cartoon. And in Denmark, you will not be indicted for it. You might remember the story of the caricatures. But it appears that nobody has followed this example. So why one wouldn't do that? Because if you don't publish it every week, but people have arrived at an opinion that the knife has to be held in the right hand and the fork should be right in the left hand, or else one can write in an article into the law. So not publishing such cartoons on a weekly basis, is this an example of censorship or no? All right, let it be called self-censorship. I don't mind. And in continuing in the same vein, cynical vein, if you have been allowed to talk on Channel 1, on the talk show, I no longer go to the talk shows at Channel 1, even though I'm invited, but I don't like to sit there and to yell. But let us say that one were to be a proper way to express your ways. But if you were to say it in a proper way, you can also express your viewpoint in a much more argumentative and proper way. People could read between the lines in the Soviet Union, and because we are in some ways moving towards the restoration of this glorious past, I am extremely conscious and appreciative of this ability to read between the lines. Well, in conclusion of this session, I would also like to, apart from the global tendencies, we shall be talking about the notions and the meanings of words and different terms. I think that the censorship as a notion is something that comes from the state and something that is banned by the Constitution. And what you mean is, I think, more of a pertains to the ethical code of a journalist. I congratulate you with this very interesting start for the seminar, and let me thank Georgy Bovt and thank you for mentioning this very important historical view. I think that only institutional development, the link between the political system and the society is what we have to be conscious about. We shall break for coffee, and thank you. We shall resume in 30 minutes.